Well, I'm sure you've heard of New Zealand On Air. They're the public media funding agency, and according to their website, their primary function is to make sure New Zealand stories, songs and perspectives are created and found and enjoyed by New Zealand audiences. They say they exist to reflect and develop New Zealand identity and culture. Well, they're certainly keen to develop our transgender identity for sure, using your hard-earned taxpayer money. Let's check it out. So according to New Zealand On Air, here's their strategic framework. Yeah, let me know if and when you have any idea what that's going on about. But according to their media release on the 11th of April, this month, they say this: engaging content for younger audiences on platforms they use. New Zealand's young audiences will be catered to with a range of new content served on multiple platforms as New Zealand On Air continues to look for innovative ways to engage these audiences. So they're targeting young people. They say we continue to prioritise children's and youth content, and our research and experience points towards content that young people can engage with on multiple platforms. Now, here's one of the major projects to get funding. Having racked up hundreds of thousands of views in its first season, the Gender Agenda will return looking to educate and provide community to rangatahi by platforming often unheard LGBTQIA+ perspectives. How much funding, you're asking? The Gender Agenda 2, which is 5 lots of 10 minutes for viewing on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok and Facebook, up to, well, basically $400,000. So that's less than an hour's content for $400,000. But what's worse is that this is you probably picked this up already, the second time they've received that amount. Yes, this is season 2. Last April, they also got some funding. And it says this: $5 million investment in content for New Zealand youth where they are. New Zealand On Air is taking a bold approach to engaging young New Zealanders with local content. A social media first approach would be needed to reach 15 to 24-year-old age audience. And here we are, funding the Gender Agenda. 5 lots of 10 minutes for viewing on YouTube, up to, once again, just under $400,000. Anthony Bourdain meets queercore punk rock in this docuseries following non-binary host Perrin Hastings in a search for answers and gender identity. Who's Anthony Bourdain? Yeah, I'd never heard of him either. Anthony Bourdain apparently was an American celebrity chef, author and travel documentarian who starred in programs focusing on cuisine and the human condition. And as I said, how much funding? Same as this year. $400,000 for 50 minutes. Now, just as an aside, I noted that they also gave money to TVNZ's grubby youth channel called Re, and I say Re because we've actually talked about some of the content that they have on that channel. And the money was going towards What Sex Ed Didn't Teach You. 15 lots of 90 seconds and basically $180,000 of funding. A witty and straight up 15-part series that covers the lessons in sex advice young people wish they'd learnt at school instead of figuring it out on their own. Well, yeah, I actually can't find any evidence of this online, which may be a good thing. But you can see that New Zealand On Air think that young people only think about one thing. So back to our Gender Agenda program. I thought we'd look at the first season. So I've watched it, so you don't have to. It's 1 hour of my life that I will never get back. But hey, you are welcome. So here's their YouTube channel, which says non-binary, trans, cis, totally confused. Unpack your gender dysphoria with us in a new docuseries. The Gender Agenda follows non-binary presenter Perrin, they, them, on a quest for answers and identity as they explore the complicated issues of gender in this crazy world. And of course, it reminds us that it's made with support from New Zealand On Air. Yeah, so this is what you have to look forward to.
Are you non-binary, trans, a boy, a girl, or totally confused?
Female hyenas, they actually have pseudo-penis.
Oh,
Super interesting.
go on. In this series, I'll be diving deep into the everyday struggles surrounding gender and biological sex.
We need diversity, just literally for society to function.
This is the Gender Agenda.
Yeah, whew. Okay, this is going to be painful. Right, let's get into it. First episode, gender versus sex. What's the difference? Well, that's easy, nothing. They're the same thing. But anyway, let's play their game anyway.
Sex is complicated, and I don't mean the woo-hoo kind. Biological sex is a phrase used by politicians and warriors of truth to fight back against the gender fluids that threaten to drown us all. How do I get out of here? Oh. But what does biological sex actually mean? Does biology refute gender? Could chromosomes just be bad at algebra? Is the binary in a secret polycule? My name is Perrin Hastings. I'm an animator, game master, and non-binary creature of the night. In this series, I'll be diving deep into the everyday struggles surrounding gender and
Okay, that's enough of that. So we sort of get into the fact that they're going to play around with sex and gender. And then they, in this first episode, they get into some incredible biological gymnastics around animals. Oh, and of course, intersex, which, well, intersex has nothing to do with gender identity at all. But anyway, let's have a watch of this.
So let's start with the basics.
When it comes to biological sex, this is usually what we're told. There are two possible sexes, male and female. Your particular assignment is decided by two little X's or a friendly little Y. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus, and they all live happily ever after in our cozy, unbreakable binary, right?
You don't see that in nature.
This is Kezia. They're an entomologist, behavioural ecologist, and a queer scientist. They're going to help me expose this biological quandary in the most natural place I know, Sea Life Kelly Talton's aquarium.
When we're looking at nature, is biological sex just this hard-cut binary thing?
Honestly, binary is kind of the anomaly.
Could you give us some examples?
Yeah, of course. So I can bring up female hyenas for one.
I like where this is going.
So female hyenas actually are the leaders of the pack. They
Girl
also
boss.
have absolute girl bosses. They actually have pseudo-penises.
Oh,
Yeah, super interesting.
go on. Generally, when you think penis, even pseudo-penis, you
Yeah.
think male.
Well, that brings a whole new meaning to spotted dick. But do you have anything less phallic on the menu?
Clownfish, that's one of those examples that a lot of people are taught. So in this case, we have a group of clownfish led by a dominant female and a kind of less dominant male.
Right, beta male, soy boy.
Soy boy,
Yeah.
absolutely. When the female dies, this lesser dominant male goes, well, time to rise
Okay.
up, takes her place, but becomes female to do so.
Okay.
Yeah, so he becomes she,
Yeah.
a reproductive female, dominant,
So actively reproductive.
actively reproductive.
Okay, okay.
Okay, sure. But those are hyenas and clownfish. The binary wasn't made for them. It was made for humans. So where did this idea of a gender binary come from? I'm on the hunt with my trusty companion and intersex advocate, Jelly O'Shea.
Okay, we'll just leave the intersex advocate there. You probably don't want to hear it. They always bring in the intersex, but that's not an identity. Here's the point with the hyena. The female hyena gives birth through what we call a penis. They have a unique reproductive system which they give birth through a pseudopenis, which is not so different from the males. This is because they have a highly masculinized genitalia, which is thought to be an adaptation for dominance. and social status in their matriarchal society. And the penis is used for, or the pseudo-penis is used for urination, mating, and giving birth. Yeah, sounds sort of female, doesn't it? And then the show moves on to clownfish and to try and make their case. And once again, a spectacular fail. Here's the reality. All clownfish are born male. They're apparently protandrous hermaphrodites, meaning they are born male and can change sex to become female later in life. The dominant male in a clownfish group will change sex to become female if the breeding female dies. If the female breeding female dies, and no, male clownfish cannot give birth in the traditional sense. But hey, don't let the facts get in the way. Now, anyway, on to episode 2, how to express your gender identity. And as expected, it's already time to market drag queens, because we haven't seen a drag queen for at least, 7 minutes? Well, since the episode started. So here we go.
I need a guide. A true king of the ring, whose initiative is high and whose fashion is practically dangling. I need drag king superstar, Hugo Girl.
I think about the idea a lot that if we lived in a world in which gender norms were less rigid, what would I dress like?
Yeah.
You know, so like I'm with my queer family today, I'm wearing pink, it's cute, but like if I go to work, if I'm working with strangers, I'm like grey button up, you know? So I dress plainly and masculinely in everyday life, so I can be seen as who I am, so I can pass. Yeah. Did you know that the colours for pink and blue were reversed for a long time before modern history?
So pink was boys, blue was girls.
Mm-hmm. Girls wore baby blue for the Virgin Mary. The theory is that boys wore pink as like a muted down military red. Social meaning of those colours just drifted. And then after industrialisation, some marketing genius decided that children's toys should be gendered. So
of course.
Families had to buy multiple. And by that time, they just shifted in meaning. It got baked in, got set in stone that it was the opposite. We need to all be free to express ourselves in a way that is true and authentic. Just literally for society to function. Yeah. We need diversity.
It's like 100 ties on a jacket. We do a little comfy wrap. We could go full bondage if we wanted.
I love it.
Okay, and then there's an interview about pressure to conform to the binary or to pass. Now, who is this interview with? Well, I'm glad you asked, actually. It's with a critical and cultural theorist whose work diagnoses a socio-economic, cultural and subjective condition of late capitalism from Auckland University. She draws in particular on Marxist and psychoanalytic perspectives with expertise in the work of Karl Marx, early Frankfurt School, so lots of critical theory there. This is reflected in both her teaching and supervision that utilises these perspectives on a broad range of topics, including gender and sexuality, transgender, consumerism, and popular culture. Listen to this sentence. The multiple and interconnected forms of social and economic injustice, discrimination, marginalisation, otherness, and exploitation and their intersectionality are central to her critique, particularly in respect to her positionality as a trans woman. Okay, so this is actually a biological man.
Passing is to conform to certain conventions of what it means to be a man or woman. And there's a question of who are we seeking legitimation from? And there's this notion that psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan has of the big other, and the big other is like society. Imagine society is this all-seeing thing, and we unconsciously regulate our behaviours to this because we want to fit in, we want to belong. And when you don't fit in, when your appearance jars with those norms, then you become othered, you become subject to judgment, and there's an enormous amount of pressure to perform to those norms. In some ways, if I could pass in that conventional sense, life would be easier, but there's also a position that I have as an academic where not passing in that conventional sense actually opens up a conversation that we need to have.
I have no idea what that was all about. Anyway, it's all part of the indoctrination. Oh, by the way, Don't forget, you're paying for this. So on to episode 3. I bet you're glad I watched all this so you wouldn't have to. Episode 3 is about how different cultures understand gender. And the question is asked, what do smallpox, Christianity, cultural erasure, murder of Indigenous people, and colonisation of gender have in common? Well, the answer must be only in the minds of the creators of this program.
Colonization. It's the reason the world is the way it is. We know all of its greatest hits: smallpox, Christianity, cultural erasure, and the violent displacement and murder of Indigenous people all around the globe. But on one of its B-sides is a lesser-known fact that doesn't get quite as much playtime: the colonization of gender.
Oh, and then it's followed by the renunciation of everything that is white.
First, let's address the caucasity in the room. Me! I'm as white as the Copenhagen snow, which means I've grown up with a very Western way of looking at gender, where everything is neatly categorized into 2 roles: the award-winning man and its best supporting actor, the woman. But despite the horrific efforts of my ancestry, the world is a varied and wonderful place, filled with cultures and religions of all different cardinal directions. So, with all that variety, I gotta know, what does gender look like outside of Western influence?
When I think of concepts of gender, I can't escape this discomfort that I have with colonization. In my te ao Māori way of interpreting gender, honestly, I don't know if I fully understand what that means. Of course, I'm not trying to separate myself from patriarchal systems that I benefit off of. But in my te ao Māori identity, it's a complex thing. And I think in te ao Pākehā, especially in languaging gender, it's something perhaps that feels foreign to me in my understanding. Te ao Māori provides us with like manifestos and manifestos of regenerative ways of being.
What does that duality look like?
Takatapuitanga looks and feels like the way that we reference and include these dualities, both the masculine, both the feminine. This idea that we're not the sum of just one of those parts. And when we acknowledge concepts like whakapapa, how it is that we regenerate genealogy, or how we're connected to sources of life, we must acknowledge that we're connected to both a masculine source of life and a feminine source of life. And some people call that mom and dad.
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh, mum and dad. That's awkward. Natural, you know, binary, masculine, feminine, marriage. Okay, look, let's keep going. Time to stab Christianity, but let's find a woke church to do that with rainbow flags and diversity and inclusion, of course.
It's clear that colonization has had a major effect on its victims and their cultural ideas of self, whether that's through a disconnect with Western gender roles or a demonization of their own. So that makes me wonder, what must it be like for folks whose pre-colonial selves are no longer accessible?
Oh yeah.
This Technicolor daydream is Sean Wimilaratne. They're a Sri Lankan Kiwi and a trustee for Arika Aotearoa.
I moved here when I was 12. Because I was raised in a very Christian household, we didn't really do many Sri Lankan things. Like, I'm brown in my skin, but I think traditionally I can slip right in with like a white household. What
does that look like? You know, pre-colonization, how did Sri Lanka like see gender?
Well, you tell me. I'm looking. It's very confronting reading about it. What I know so far is that before the white man stepped on our shores, there were thriving kingdoms of very fluid expressions of gender. Who came first, Portuguese or Dutch? One of them.
one of the series of colonizers of the world.
They saw that expression and made it very sexual. Like women who choose to participate in traditional dance, associate that with prostitution, and it became a very different narrative.
That is all kinds of messed up. Thankfully, queer spaces in New Zealand celebrate diversity and inclusion. But have they made enough space for our South Asian whānau?
Okay, team, we're almost there. Hope you're stoked that you're funding all this, targeted at young people. Episode 4. Now we move on to pushing the chemicalization and castration. And remember, this is being targeted at young people. This episode is, what does gender affirming healthcare look like in New Zealand?
HRT, top surgery, bottom surgery, puberty blockers. We've all heard the rants, seen the politics, and read that one Facebook post from your estranged uncle. But even I, a non-binary wonder I am, still don't know what gender-affirming healthcare actually is. Perhaps a jaunt into the world of academia could give us a clearer image. Kia ora. To guide this educational junket, I've found Alex from Counting Ourselves, an anonymous online survey that investigates the health of trans and non-binary people all across Aotearoa.
Activists.
When we talk about gender-affirming healthcare, it refers to so many different healthcare services, interventions. So whether that's things like gender-affirming hormone therapy, different types of surgery like chest reconstruction surgery or genital surgery, laser hair removal, facial feminization surgery. Sometimes it can refer to psychosocial support or mental health support. Ultimately, what it comes down to is taking whatever steps you need to feel at peace with your body.
Okay, and then the focus of the episode is how mean it is that it isn't available on demand, to be on puberty blockers and to be able to castrate healthy breasts and penises, as Green MP Benjamin Doyle wants. And they go to a part of New Zealand where you can't find doctors who want to castrate and chemicalise healthy people, normal doctors. And lo and behold, they are even able to drag, pardon the pun, drag in a drag queen to the story, just to keep pushing the narrative. Oh, and then they subtly suggest that you should lie about your mental health age to get the treatment you want. Now, there's a disclaimer, but it's pretty clear what they're suggesting. Have a watch.
I'm a small town girl at heart. From the Bay of Plenty. Grew up in Gisborne actually, but that's where I was from, and then grew up in Whakatane.
It's the Divalicious Diva, the drag pop princess of New Zealand. It's
Miss Gina!
At 24, I started doing drag for the first time, and something just started happening to me. There was this confidence. There was this woman inside that wanted to come out, and after a year of doing drag, I was like, I think I want to be a woman during the day too. So I was like, where do I go? What do I do? And so I went to my GP down in Tauranga and was like, I think I want to start hormones. I think I'm trans. And she was like, I don't know what to do. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I ended up at the Tauranga Hospital, have a psych evaluation to see if I'm normal. And
how do you feel about that, by the way?
Yeah, it was very awkward because I had heard stories from some of my trans sisters who were denied HRT. They were denied their start into transitioning because of mental health issues in the past. So during my little evaluation at Tauranga Hospital, I lied and said that I've never had suicidal thoughts. I don't know what depression is. I'm all good, because I wanted all those little ticks so that I could start hormones, which is something I don't recommend, lying about stuff that is important, like mental health. But at that time, I was so scared that I would get denied the right to start becoming who I always wanted to be.
Whoops, that may have been an admission he didn't mean to make. Did you hear him say who I wanted to be, not who I am? Did he just admit that it was actually a choice? And did you hear the bit about my trans sisters? It actually backs up the whole rapid onset gender dysphoria, the ROGD, which is a group of friends who all suddenly become trans, which is a real contagion that LGBT activists will never mention. And then our doctor host, talks about the super common experience of young men taking HRT in this next clip. Hormone replacement therapy, a treatment used to relieve the symptoms of menopause. Menopause that affects only women, marking the end of their menstrual cycles and reproductive years. But hey, TVNZ's documentary isn't going to let the biological facts get in the way of their indoctrination.
What is this mythical HRT thing? Put simply, hormone replacement therapy is a two-step process that first slows production of your
dominant sex hormone, then boost the production of your non-dominant one to establish a new hormonal hierarchy. This shift in power leads to a whole bunch of physical changes in the body, like softer skin, to increased body hair, or even a freshly grown rack of boobs. It's a super common practice, so why is it so hard to access?
Because of the historic lack of knowledge among healthcare professionals, trans people are often accessing healthcare with having done a lot of research themselves, to the point where often it's a common experience for trans people to be educating their healthcare professionals about what they need and how to get it.
Yeah. Actually, before I think I said TVNZ, I meant to say New Zealand On Air, this documentary is. But you can see in that clip how the activists are trying to determine the assessment, the diagnosis and treatment. Not the medical one, but the ideological one. Right. You'll be glad to know that we've made it to the final episode of this indoctrination. Hopefully you're fully on board now and are ready for your first intake of puberty blockers and to have your healthy genitals chopped off, for the cause, of course. The final episode, thankfully, and it's entitled How to Find Your Chosen Family. Because if you're in the LGBT+, apparently your families are off limits. Although there's a really interesting admission at the end of this clip. Have a listen.
Families. They come in all shapes and sizes. For some, they're a source of embarrassment and unfortunate genetics. But for us daffodils planted firmly under the rainbow, family can be a word with far more complicated attachments.
So when our foundational families fail to keep us emotionally nourished, it can feel like we've been left out in the cold. Thankfully for us genderqueer Gentiles, biological families are just the beginning.
Yep, the only truly accurate part of this whole series. Biological families are the beginning. Male, female, biology, sex, reality. Congratulations to the producers and researchers. You did it, correct? 100%. But unfortunately, it's downhill from there, of course, because families and home are the problem. A common message that you are told by LGBT activists.
Tāpui activists who uses their digital platform to uplift and educate their rangatahi whānau.
I know for a lot of the rangatahi that I work with, they don't feel comfortable at home, they don't feel comfortable at their marae, they don't feel comfortable just walking down the street. And so just creating a space where we can be safe as a whānau can be really difficult because of the stress that we are under as a community.
If you go to places like Rainbow Youth or Auckland Pride,
Knock, knock.
you'll find plenty of safe events that have been made just for you.
Welcome to the Pride office. Yeah. And we know that, girl.
We know you. Oh, we know you. We know you.
Yeah.
And it's happening all over the motu.
Wellington is especially huge on queer artistry, everything. It's just so gay. It's just so gay. I love it.
Making her way to the booth, it's Hybrid Rose. From trailblazing for bathroom access in her high school to entrancing the Wellington music scene with her hyper-femme beats.
Yeah, now that Hybrid Rose, that rang a bell. He was a trans activist at Marlborough Girls High who wanted to force the issue of using girls' toilets, a dude going to a girls' high school. And the school capitulated without getting permission from the females themselves so that dudes could use toilets and changing rooms. Yeah, there was quite a bit of coverage about that. And we actually, this is back in 2016, we actually did a short documentary on the issue at the time with a family who were bravely opposing the whole thing. Any opposition was shut down though. That's how long this toilet and changing room issue has been going on. But this is what Hybrid Rose, that they just featured in that clip, admitted regarding that issue back in 2016. And pardon the language, so HR is Hybrid Rose. I relate to that because I threatened my high school principal that I would beep on her desk for telling me to use the boys' bathroom. OMG, please tell me you did. Hybrid Rose, I seriously did. It was like June 6, 2016. She told me I still have a dick, so I classified as a male, and I turned around and shouted, beep, I will beep on your beeping desk if you keep treating me like this. I was an angry person. But yeah, these are the role models at New Zealand On Air, using your hard-earned taxpayer dollars want to put in front of your children. So there we have it. $400,000 worth of indoctrination of young people funded by you. And now they're funding another round of indoctrination, also funded by you. But what should annoy you the most is the indoctrination and radical gender ideology. It's being rammed down by a government agency on young people. They say it's for 15 to 24-year-olds, but it's blatantly obvious that they want young people and children to watch this, and they'll get access to it. It's a subtle but sure perversion of the innocent minds of our young people. Perhaps one day we'll get some politicians with backbone to put an end to this nonsense and this funding. One day.